Marriage is to be held in honor because it is more than about two people who are in love. It is the gospel message on display among a sin-laden world. And so to honor marriage is to honor the gospel, and then to honor the gospel then is to honor the church, and then ultimately, more importantly, it is to honor Christ. And the opposite could be said about it as well, that to dishonor your marriage, your personal marriage, or to dishonor marriage even in general is then to dishonor the gospel and to deviate from the gospel, to distort the gospel, and therefore to dishonor the church and to dishonor Christ. This morning I am hoping that we can get a better view of how and why marriage should be held in honor among all. And to do so, I want us to go back to the beginning, the first marriage, and I want us to go into the future to the last marriage. And then we'll ultimately come back to the middle with the text that you're actually in. So those are kind of the three places we're going to go. Now, I will say this before I begin. I took out so much from this sermon in the hopes that I would get done somewhere around 12 o'clock. I took 2 pages out of this sermon. So there's a lot that I wanted to say that I'm not able to say. If you want to know more about what I was going to say, but I'm not able to say, you can see me some other time. Well, let's go real quick to Genesis. In Genesis chapter 1, what we get there is this broad view of creation. And so in this broad view of creation, we ultimately see some of the main verses of the text coming out of verse 26 to 28. And if you will read it with me. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, He created him, male and female. He created them. And God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth." I want to point out some quick things here as we go through these 3 verses. The first truth that I want to point out is that man and woman are both created in the image of God. We see that in the text, right? That we're going to create them in our image. They both bear the imago Dei, the image of God. And even though later on in chapter 2, if you go into chapter 2, you get a much closer vision of how this all happens, of how He actually went about this, creating man and woman. What we see that is in chapter 1 that both sexes are image bearers of our God. And to bear the image of God does not mean that we look like God. Obviously, we don't even look like each other. So it's not that God is some exalted man, and so therefore we are made in His image to look like Him in some fashion or some form. God is spirit. He is not a man. Jesus says that, right? In John chapter 4. God is spirit, not a man. And so, if we are made in His image, that means that we are made with this type of spirit. We resemble Him spiritually. At least we did in our original state. And it sets us apart from other animals. We have a spirit as God is spirit. And that spirit provides us with the ability to understand, to comprehend. We have reason, we have emotions, we have morals, We have moral accountability. Animals don't have that kind of thing. Everybody looks, when a dog or a cat, seems to get in trouble and they look like they're really sad and they're really mournful. Scientific studies show that that's not true. That is a mechanism that they use to fool us into thinking that they are remorseful for what they have done so that we hopefully won't get on him again. There is no remorse in an animal. There is no moral accountability in an animal. No morality whatsoever, right? So the first one is that we are, as man and woman, we are both image bearers of our God. The second truth then is that both man and woman are thus created as equals. They are given an equal mission by God, namely to multiply and rule the world. That's our job. That's what we are created to do. That's what God wanted from us. And that leads us to our third truth. Man and woman both, they were to work on this mission together as equal partners in tandem with complementary skills and strengths. That's what it means to be a complementarian. Men and women complement each other, not compliment each other and saying, hey, you did a good job. Not that kind of compliment, right? Complement each other as in, I have some strengths and I have some weaknesses. And Katie has some strengths and Katie has some weaknesses. And so we complement each other where I am weak, Katie seems to be strong. How many of you as parents, let's go for parents right now. How many of you as parents have ever gotten frustrated with your kid? And like, you're frustrated with your kid, but your spouse seems to be like, hey, it's no big deal, it's cool, I'm all good. Anybody ever had that happen before? And you're like, are you not paying attention? Are you not seeing what I'm seeing? Are you not experiencing what I'm experiencing? And they're like, hey, I can handle this. This is cool. Anybody? Right? Ever happen? Absolutely. They're like, how? Somehow God works that out. That one parent is flipping out, and the other one's like, hey, I got this. And then, like, 10 seconds later, the other parents calm down. The other one's flipping, right? We complement. It's kind of the idea there. But there are strengths, there are weaknesses, and we complement each other. As men and women, we complement each other as husband and wife. And so we can help each other accomplish the mission that God has given to us. If we're going back to just Adam and Eve, and we're talking about subduing the world, ruling the world, and multiplying and having lots of children and such. We work together to do that. We don't work separately, but together. Well, the problem, though, is not in chapter 1. The problem is not in chapter 2. The problem ultimately comes in chapter 3. We don't have time to go through this entire chapter. That could take a long time. I'm just going to point out some 3 verses that I want us to look at. 3 verses with 3 truths. And these. The first one is that there is blame that happens in chapter 3. We've talked about this a number of times before, but there is blame from Adam in chapter 3. Look at verse 12. The man said, right, so they've fallen. Satan's come, he's tricked Eve. Eve is eating of the fruit, and she gives it to Adam, and Adam eats of the fruit, and they both have fallen into sin. And Adam blames Eve. The man said, this woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me fruit, the fruit of the tree, and I ate. So not only did Adam sit around next to Eve as Eve was getting tempted by Satan and not do anything, but once she did something and he followed suit, he blamed her. At this point in time, Adam simply has sought to remove himself from all responsibility whatsoever. Not my fault. Good thing we men don't do that these days. We learn. So there's a blame game that's going on. He who was to be the leader, one who was to be the protector, not only didn't protect, but now is blaming, sidestepping responsibility. Of course, there's the curse. Everything's been cursed. The entire universe has been cursed. Paul says that everything in creation is groaning, waiting for the redemption of God's sons. Everything's been cursed, but specifically I want us to turn to chapter 3, verse 16. To To the woman he said, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. That idea of your desire shall be for your husband is really more of the idea of your desire is going to be contrary to that of your husband. Now that never happens, right, ladies? There's never been a time in marriage where you have disagreed with your husband. Right? Or has it happened? Part of the curse here, right? So we got to remember, so they've got different objectives. And you got to remember, right, that the husband and wife were on the same mission. But now they have opposing objectives. They're supposed to be on the same page, go in the same direction, and now they want to go this way. And then, of course, there's the sacrifice here. Look at verse 21. And the Lord God made for Adam and for his wife garments of skin and clothed them. God instituted the first sacrifice so that they would be adequately clothed. They tried to clothe themselves in fig leaves, not adequate. So that they would be adequately clothed, he provided the first sacrifice, and henceforth the sacrifice would be necessary to clothe not just simply the body, but the actual soul. So that's the beginning of marriage. Let's go real quick, because this takes us to the ending of marriage, the last marriage that we see. Go with me to Revelation chapter 19. I was scared this morning when you were reading out John's Revelation. I was like, oh, he's going to start touching on my sermon. He didn't, though. No worries. John chapter 19. Look at verses 6 through 8 here. Then I heard what seemed to be the voice of a great multitude, like the roar of many waters, and like the sound of mighty peals of thunder, crying out, Hallelujah! For the Lord our God, the Almighty, reigns. Let us rejoice and exult and give him the glory, for the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his bride has made herself ready. It was granted her to clothe herself with fine linen, bright and pure, for the fine linen is the righteous deeds of the saints. And by the time we get into chapter 21 real quick, let's go there. Just flip your page probably one time, maybe twice. Chapter 21, verse 2, we see this. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And then let's go all the way to verse 9 again. Then came one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls full of the seven last plagues, and spoke to me, saying, Come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. And he carried me away in the Spirit to a great high mountain, and showed me the holy city Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, having the glory of God, its radiance like a most rare jewel, like a jasper, clear as crystal. The New Jerusalem that we read of in Revelation is not literally a city. It is the bride of Christ that has been adorned for her husband Jesus. It is our righteousness. It is us as a glorified body of believers. When we left Adam and Eve, we saw that they were clothed in animal skins. They were covered in sin, and shame, and crude animal skins. But in the last chapter of the Bible, we not only see a restoration, we see a fulfillment. We see a fulfillment of what marriage is. What Adam was supposed to be, Christ is. And what the church, or what Eve was supposed to be, the church becomes. All of our righteous deeds, Isaiah tells us, right? All of our righteous deeds are like filthy rags. If you want to, you can go there. But Isaiah 64:6 says, we have all become like one who is unclean, And all of our righteous deeds are like a polluted garment. We're covered, our clothing is nastiness, disgusting rags. And yet Christ has cleaned us up. He has turned our polluted garments, He's turned our filthy rags into linens of white. Go with me real quick to Isaiah chapter. Keep your finger here. But go to Isaiah 61. Look at verse 10. Don't forget to keep your finger in chapter 21 of Revelation. Look at verse 10. I will greatly rejoice in the Lord. My soul shall exult in my God. For He has clothed me with the garments of salvation. He has covered me with the robe of righteousness. As a bridegroom decks himself like a priest with a beautiful headdress, and as a bride adorns herself with her jewels. We go back. Look at verse 11. Having the glory of God, its radiance like a most rare jewel, like a jasper, clear as crystal. What Isaiah was saying was going to happen is happened. And you might also notice that verse in chapter 61 of Isaiah is very similar to what we read in Revelation chapter 19. Christ does for His bride what Adam did not do for Eve. He leads the church. He loves the church. He looks after the church. He lusters the church, or illustrates the church. So that's the beginning of marriage, the end of marriage, the last marriage. Now we can go back into the middle when we started, Ephesians chapter 5, verse 22 to 33. Hopefully we've got this picture going on. Because we live in between the beginning and the end. We live after the curse, but before the beautiful restoring fulfillment that comes by Jesus' love for His bride. So we're supposed to, as husband and wife, as Christian husband and wife, we are supposed to reflect the last marriage and shun the first one. We act more like Christ in the church and less like Adam and Eve. Right now we are living in a miniature marriage. And like I said last week, it isn't wrong or bad to miss out on this at all, right? It's a model. It's not bad or wrong to miss out on it. No one ever went to the Eiffel Tower, right? And while they were there going, man, really I wish I had seen a miniature version of this thing. Right? Nobody does that. Nobody ever goes and, somebody who was there at the signing of the Declaration of Independence just goes, this would have been better if it was more of a Dalai Lama than the actual thing. Right? It doesn't happen. Nobody goes to a marriage looking for the cake toppers. Right? They go there for the real thing. So to miss out on the model, to miss out on the image is nothing. But to miss out on the real thing is everything. So keeping that in mind, and what we've said about the fall and about the restorative fulfillment when Christ returns, let's really focus on what marriage ought to be. So let's go back with the wives here, because wives, you play the role of the church. Wives, submit to your husbands, verse 22, chapter 5 of Ephesians, verse 22. Wives, submit to your own husbands, as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, His body, and is Himself its Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. So 2 points about these 3 verses. First one is this: the way that you act toward your husband shows a lot about your relationship to Jesus. Paul instructs wives to submit to their husbands as to the Lord. You don't submit to your husbands as to your husband. You submit to your husband as to the Lord. In other words, your submission has nothing to do with your husband and everything to do with Jesus. And this is the same language. If you want to go there, we can go there real quick in Colossians. This is the same language that Paul uses about slaves and masters, or about what we would probably more look at more like employees to employers. In chapter 3, verse 23, where he says this, he says, "Whatever you do, work heartily, as for the Lord and not for men." So as wives, you're not supposed to submit to your husbands as to a man, as to a husband, but you're supposed to submit to them as to the Lord. Christian wives submit to their husbands not because their husbands deserve it, but because they are representing the church's response to Christ. Number 2, second thing real quick, is that your submission is based on your understanding of the church. Because you are representing the church. And if you don't know how to represent the church, if you don't know what the church is about, then you're not going to represent well. So as the church submits to Christ, so wives are supposed to submit as to the Lord and their husbands. As a Christian wife, you are first Christian and then wife. You are a Christian wife. You're a first Christian before you are a wife. Even if you were a wife before you became a Christian, you're still a Christian before you're a wife. Right? Thus, you play the role in the church's response to Jesus. So a wife must meditate then, needs to meditate on the relationship of Jesus and the church. What relationship do they have? And to that end, we've just seen this relationship being played out before us. Right? We saw what happened in the garden. We saw the fall of Adam and Eve, and really the fall of marriage itself. And then we see the ending with Jesus and the bride, Jesus and the church, and how that all came about, and what all happens with the church in Revelation 19 and Revelation 21. We see all of that portrayed, and we see that Christ is leading his bride into holiness and purity in those chapters. And the key word there is really just leading. He's leading them, leading us there. See, Adam refused to lead. Adam advocated his leadership. But Christ refuses not to lead. He will lead. And Adam refused his responsibility. Hey, this is a woman you gave me. She gave it to me. It's her fault. He refused to take responsibility, but Christ took all of the responsibility, the entire curse of creation upon himself by being crucified. He took the responsibility, he took the curse by hanging on a tree, because cursed is every man who is hung upon a tree. That's what Christ has done. And so as Christ leads, and he leads us through the prompting of the Holy Spirit, through his word, the church then submits to his leadership. The church follows after Christ as he leads. They do as he has called upon them to do. They trust him to keep his promises, to take responsibility, leading us safely home to heaven, that we may be presented in white lines, pure, holy, blameless. That's what Christ does. That's Christ's mission. And as the church, if you go back, remember we go back with Adam and Eve, right? God had created them, male and female. He gave them the same mission. So we as the church being restored, we take on the mission that is Christ's mission. We do what Christ has called on us to do. His mission becomes our mission as the church. Jesus told his disciples in various places that he came to save that which was lost. He came to save, to seek and to save that which was lost, or to heal the sick, to bind the brokenhearted. To save the sinner. That's his mission. Making us holy, the sanctification of the church is part of that mission. His mission then becomes our mission because he is our husband and we are the bride. When we see this mission, we don't call it a mission, we call it what? The commission. Right? Matthew chapter 28, 18 through 20. Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. His mission has become our mission as the church. Adam and Eve were given that one mission: multiply and subdue the earth. Subdue the world. They never even began getting to work on that. From the fall, they began having opposing objectives. But here's the ultimate marriage, Christ and his church, and the objectives come back into focus. Christ and the church have one mission: multiply and subdue the earth. The same mission that Adam and Eve were given, except this time it's not physically subduing it, but spiritually. Multiply. Get other people. Tell them about Christ. Let them know about the Savior. Fill the earth with the children of God. As Christ reigns. Picture of that husbands and wives be saved. As Christ and the church work hand in hand and sync in tandem with one another. Each performing their roles. So husbands and wives ought to be doing the same. The wife plays the role of the church, responding as the church would respond. So the wife then takes on the mission of the husband. So his mission becomes your mission as well. Keep in mind that Christian wife, you are a Christian for your wife. And so if your husband's mission is anti-Christ, then you do not take on his mission. But you keep the mission of God, the mission that Christ would have you do. Remember, you are Christ's first, and then your husband's. If you are in mission together with complementary strengths, weaknesses. And so you are to utilize your strengths to the best of your abilities in your marriage. So that might mean that you should advise your husband. And all wives should advise us, because guess what? Sometimes we're dumb. We need advice. Warn them. Uplift them. Encourage them. Cast a different view. Just so that they have to see things from a different perspective. Whatever your strength is, you need to be making sure that you are using it, utilizing it within the confines of marriage. If the wife represents the church, then of course that only leaves one other person for the husband to represent, and that is, husbands represent what? Our human. Christ. We represent Christ. So let's look real quick. Go back to Ephesians chapter 5. Let's look at verses 25 to 27 here. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that he might be holy and without blemish. Christ's love, the love that we as husbands are supposed to be providing for our wives, is very purposeful, not passive. Very purposeful. It's very active. It's mainly shown in really, I guess you could say, two acts, because it can kind of be combined into two acts here. First off, by giving himself, right? This is a selfless love that Christ has. Jesus said that greater love has no one than this, to lay down his life for his friends. That's the greatest love that we have, right? That's what Jesus did for us. That's what we ought to be willing to do for, of course, our wives. That's the love that we should be having. Now, probably we as husbands, there's probably not going to ever be a time in our lives. Odds are against it. There's going to be a time in our lives where we are going to have to literally lay down our lives for our spouse, for our wives. Probably not going to happen. But here's the thing. Sometimes it's easier to lay down our lives, physically lay down our lives, to die for our wives, than it is to live for them. To give up some of the things that we hope for, and dream of, and long for the sake of our wives. See, that's the second part. Jesus not only died for her, he lives for her as well. That's what we are supposed to, that's the type of love that we should have. Sacrificial love. Living love. He died for her so that he would live and make her to be what she's supposed to be. And we saw before, all of our righteous deeds, polluted garden, nastiness. It is only because of what Christ did, that he died and then he rose again, that we are able to have any righteous deeds whatsoever and to be clothed in these fine linens. Look with me real quick to Hebrews chapter 7, verse 25. The writer says this, he says, consequently, he is able to save to the uttermost. He's able to make us holy, save us to the uttermost, take us all the way home, holy, purified, glorified, however you want to call it, sanctified and glorified both. He is able to save us to the uttermost. Those who draw near to God through him, since he always lives to make intercession for them. He did not just die for us. He rose to live for us so that we might be who we are to be. All that we were to be. Christ not only died for us, but he lives for us as well. So, husbands, here's your calling to your wives. You give what must be given, and live for your wife. Another way of putting it is to compare our love for our wives with our love for ourselves. We tend to be very loving people when it comes to ourselves. That's how we should be acting towards our wives. Going back to Ephesians chapter 5, verse 23. Go back to Ephesians 5 anyway. We're pointing back there where Paul has said that Christ is the head of the church, his body. So pointing back there, he says this in verse 28. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church. Christ loves his wife. It is his body. Husbands, love your wives. They're your body. We do this through nourishing. We do this through cherishing. Nourishing has the idea of growing or rearing, bringing up. It's the exact same word, and we'll see this next week, but it's the exact same word if you look at chapter 6, verse 4. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Same word. Husbands are supposed to nourish their wives, to grow them, not physically, because guess what? They're already grown. Right? We don't grow them physically. We grow them spiritually. We are to ensure that they are growing spiritually. We are to watch over them and make sure that they have time with the Lord through His Word and through prayer. We are to lead them in family devotions or in family worship. That's what we're supposed to do. We're nourishing them. That is our calling. That's how Christ nourishes us. We are to pray with and for wives. And at the same time, we're supposed to cherish them. And this idea has the same idea as caring for them. So one is you're rearing them, you're growing them in the Lord, and the other is that you are caring for them. I gotta say, I am absolutely amazed at women, at my wife at least, and from what I hear, most wives. They're just like, they blow my mind because they are all about taking care of everybody else. To the point that oftentimes they're so busy taking care of everybody else, they don't take care of themselves. Somebody is supposed to take care of the wife. Who's that going to be? I mean, wives go around like they got a little Energizer battery in their back, like the little bunny, right? I mean, they just keep going and going and going and going. And they may grab a snack on their way, or maybe stop at a fast food place in order to grab something because they're constantly on the move. A lot of times they're the last ones to bed and the first ones up in the morning. If you have babies, the wives are usually the ones that get up in the middle of the night to take care of the babies. Like, it's mind-blowing. I love that Special K commercial. Do you remember that Special K talk about women, right? Women are amazing. Yes, they are. And we men ought to understand that they are amazing and that we are to care for them. We need to make sure that she's eating and eating properly. We need to make sure that she has some rest. Not just sleep, but rest. Right? We need to make sure that maybe we can draw her a bath, right? And let her just kind of relax in the tub and keep the door shut and keep the kids out. Right? Take care care of her. Let her enjoy those rejuvenating moments that she has, because they don't come often. Now, this is what we like to do, is it not, guys? I mean, we like to kind of, we've had a hard day at work. We come home, we're tired, and all we want to do is eat a good meal that our wives have prepared for us, sit down in front of the television so that we can rest while our wives clean up, give the kids a bath, put them to bed, and then go to bed. That's what we want to do. We just want to come home, eat, relax, and then go to sleep. That's how we love ourselves. That's how we love our bodies. Guess what? We love our wife as we love our bodies. Nourish, cherish. As husbands, we are to love our wives so that we take care of them spiritually and physically as if they were our own bodies, because they are. Therefore, verse 31, therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Just like Christ and his bride. It is more than just sexual union that is being talked about. I love how Matt Jeremy puts it as the mingling of souls. One flesh. The words for body and flesh are absolutely different in the Greek, but Paul is using them here synonymously. You just read the context. He's using them synonymously here, interchangeably. Christ is the head of his church, his bride, his body. We are to love, he loves them as such, and so we are to love our brides, our body. Because no one hates his own flesh. They love her. They care of her as if she is their body. They nourish her and cherish her. That's what husbands are supposed to do. This is how you represent Christ well. This is holding marriage in honor. This is how you have the model marriage. Not the model for others to imitate, but the model that represents Christ in the church well. The model that points to the real thing. So this mystery is profound, verse 32. And I am saying that refers to Christ and the church. So if you're married, your marriage is a miniature version of the actual thing. What is actual? The true marriage is the one for anyone who receives Christ. They can be a part of that true marriage. Doesn't matter your age, doesn't matter your status, doesn't matter your past, doesn't even matter your present, doesn't even ultimately matter your future, in a sense, right? You receive Christ, he is your Lord, follow after him. You receive Christ, your Savior, your Lord. You turn from your wickedness, renouncing your sins. Then you become part of his bride. Let me give you 4 takeaways in the Bible. Number 1, if you are married, the way that you think and act toward your spouse says more about your view of Christ and his church than it does about your view of your spouse. Number 2, husbands, when you took your bride, you gave yourself up for her. She is whom you live for. And that means you will lead her well, love her well, look after her well, and illustrate her well Number 3, wives, when you took your groom, you gave yourself up to him. He is who you live for. And so that means you follow him and take on his mission as your own. Last one. Christian marriage is between two opposing marriages, the fallen and the redeemed. When we strive in our marriages to reject the fallen and represent the redeemed. So, however, let each wife love his wife as himself. And let the wife see the she respects her husband.